Trump claiming credit for helping to make this happen. In the coming weeks, Israel and the UAE say they will meet to sign deals related to tourism and trade, healthcare, culture, the environment. The UAE's American ambassador saying the deal is a win for diplomacy for the region. Let's show you the map of what we're talking about here, situating you Israel there on the Mediterranean and the UAE. Big players, of course, in the region. What could this mean and what's the significance of this deal? Nader Hashemi is joining us from Denver. He is with the Center for Middle East Studies at the university there. Nader, always good to see you. Your read on this. There's a lot of buzz coming out of the White House. Cut through it for us, though. What do you think?
Well, I'm in the skeptical camp. I don't think this is a major breakthrough for peace and stability in the Middle East. And the reason why I take that position is that Israel refuses to acknowledge that in order to enhance its security in the Middle East, it has to make peace with the peoples of the Middle East, not with the dictators that rule over them. And the only way that can happen is if Israel gives a little bit of justice to the Palestinians. And that's a position that Israel refuses to do. It refuses to accept a two-state settlement, and it refuses to accept the Palestinians as full citizens. And it thinks that it can achieve its security concerns by striking these types of deals with various dictators and despots in the Middle East, assuming that those dictators and despots will be around for a very long time. So I think looked at it from that perspective, I think there's a lot to be concerned here. I don't think this really enhances the prospects for peace. What it does is I think it gives Donald Trump perhaps a fake foreign policy victory over something that he had very little role in pulling off.
Yeah, you mentioned despots and dictators. Let me ask you about the UAE. What's the calculus on their side, do you think?
Well, I think they're trying to help Donald Trump. It's important to realize that Trump has several big allies and supporters in the Middle East, Israel, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE. So given Trump's problems domestically, he's low in the opinion polls, he might not get reelected. I think at one level, the UAE is thinking, well, we'll give Trump a victory and this might help him stay in power, and indirectly that will help us. But I think the UAE is also calculating that given rising opposition in the United States towards support for dictators and despots, for the war in Yemen, the UAE is calculating that by striking this alliance with Israel, it will act as an insurance policy, that one of the regional powers in the Middle East will now be in alliance with the UAE, and this will secure them for the long term should public opinion and should American policy sometime down the road shift against the UAE and its destabilizing policies in the Middle East.
So when we talk about deals on tourism and trade and healthcare and culture and the environment, I mean, again, is that window dressing? What would that look like? Are we going to see a lot of tourists from the UAE going to Israel or vice versa?
Well, I mean, UAE has a very small population, and so, I mean, that all sounds very nice, right? So there's not going to be a lot of sort of, Emirati citizens going to Israel. I think that's just window dressing. It makes it, seem like this is a full-blown normalization, which it is. But I think one has to look at the broader region, and one has to focus on the fundamental root of Israel's security problem in the Middle East, and that's the way it treats its Palestinian population, both the ones that are citizens and primarily the ones that are living in the West Bank and Gaza. So looked at from that perspective, this doesn't sort of enhance the broader prospects for stability in the Middle East because it completely ignores the Palestinians. In fact, Netanyahu is explicitly saying that there's only going to be a temporary pause on annexation. That annexation of the West Bank, which gives the Palestinians at the end of the day absolutely nothing, will eventually happen. It's just a question of timing. And in exchange, the United Arab Emirates is, giving Israel effectively a free pass over the way it treats its Palestinians. So this is going to lead to down the long, it's going to lead to further destabilization. It's not going to enhance the prospects for peace in the broader Middle East.
Nader Hashemi with his read on the story. Thank you for this, Nader. Appreciate it.